ago I was competing in the Barston Masters final. It's a fantastic event if you ever get a chance to take part in it. I was competing in the final and I drew in an area that's not really renowned for being too fantastic at that time of year. The final was taking place in October and I drew in the high 30s and I fished for carp for 2.5 hours. Never caught a fish. I fished a method feeder and after 2.5 hours it was clear that the section was fishing hard. In that particular final it's £100 to the winner of each section. So as we heard they were catching fish further down to my left in the teens. I decided to just do whatever I could to try and win the section. I'd been fishing the method feeder for 2.5 hours without anything. I never even had a sign. But what I did was I made a little change, one simple little change, and it just transformed my peg. It was incredible. The response I got from the fish was immediate. I've brought you along today to just kind of show you what little detail I changed that day, and I'll just show you a couple of different ways that you can tweak it and tweak your method feeder fishing so that it's not an all-out carp approach. During that match it was incredible, you know. All I did was I made one simple little change and it just transformed the peg, and it was, you know, quite clear that where I'd drawn it was in the, I think it was the high 30s, which is, you know, it's not really known for being a fantastic area at that time of year. Fish were being caught elsewhere and it, you know, it looked like we'd no chance of framing. So all I did basically was I'd been fishing for carp for about 2.5 hours with a method feeder, with pellets, hard banded pellet, boilies and wafters, the usual sort of thing. And all I did was, after 2.5 hours, I just decided to change the hook length. I changed the hook length and scaled down. So I scaled down to a size 16, and it was a carp rigger hook but with a band on it. So it was, you know, like what you would use for banded pellet. But instead of putting a pellet on in the band, I actually put maggot in there. So it was a dead red maggot in the band. Really simple to do. And the next key thing, which I think was the biggest part of, you know, the change that I made, and it was quite simply just to leave the hook bait out of the feeder. Obviously when we're fishing with a feeder or a method feeder, you're tucking the bait into the bait that's moulded around the method feeder, whether that be ground bait or pellets. You're tucking it in there, and that's part of the reason why it's so devastating, because the fish comes in for that feed just as though it's a bowl of ground bait or a bowl of pellets, and as the fish is sucking in that bait, your hook bait is in there, it sucks your hook bait in and hooks itself. Because you're only fishing a 4-inch hook length, the fish sucks the bait in and hopefully that's going to hook the fish, and it hooks itself against the feeder. That's why the method feeder is so effective. What I actually did was I left the hook bait out, because Barston is one of the places where, as we see on a lot of venues, where the fish actually come to the noise and the splash and the plop of the feeder going in. And all I thought was, if there were any skimmers or bream there, because it was fishing hard, I might catch them as well if they were around that feed that I'd been putting in for 2.5 hours. That's exactly what happened. I went onto the same spot, I changed the hook length, went on the same spot, the same clip that was at about 22 metres I think it was, so it wasn't too far out. And as soon as the feeder went in, it went in with a nice little plop. Barston's not very deep anyway, so the fish can easily follow it down. I never even got a chance to put the rod on the rest. I just moved the rod over to the rest and the tip was going, and I hooked a skimmer. It was about a pound. Obviously not a big fish, but it was very welcome. That had saved a blank. But what was to happen next was even more interesting. What happened was I did it again, I went in again, and once again I just had time to put the rod on the rest and the tip was going round. Now to me that obviously says that those fish were already there. They must have been in and around that feed, because, you know, they were there instantly. You know, it wasn't a change of presentation or application that's taken a while for fish to find. It's happened straight away. So what happened was, over the course of the next couple of hours, I actually went on to catch 15 or 16 of those fish and weighed about 24 pounds, something like that, which won the section. The interesting thing was that, you know, the fish were already there, and I had simply not had an indication on that whilst I was fishing the method feeder. I just didn't have a touch. So what I'm going to do is just quickly talk you through how I actually did that during that session. And like I said, this is something that I've used on other venues since then, and it's just a case of just believing that what you're doing by plopping the feeder in, the noise of the feeder hitting the water, the sight of the feeder falling through the water, the feeder hitting the bottom and disturbing silt, and then you've got the hook bait as well, which falls immediately after that. All those little things there are all causing some sort of an attraction and doing something in your peg, and once you believe that the fish are there, then this is a technique that you can just quickly switch to. It's very low risk. Just try it as a different way of fishing the method feeder during a session, and you'll be amazed how many times it will hook your fish that you never would have thought were even there. One of the reasons why it's such a less selective way of fishing is just because of the baits that you're going to be introducing. Rather than just sticking to pellets and just trying to single out carp, and rather than just sticking to dead reds and ground bait, where you are probably going to be, you're going to get the attentions of just skimmers, it's a combination. What we're going to be feeding is a combination of all three of those baits. The ratio is down to you. For me, I'll show you the ratio that I think has been best, certainly on venues like Barston and one or two other places, but I'll just mix it up as I go during the session, and if you do it in small batches, you can tailor make it to what you feel is right at that particular stage of the session. So we've got three basic ingredients. That's all it is: pellets, which we all know how effective they are on all commercials now, so they're just micro pellets. They're about 2 mil, I think they are. We've got the ground bait, which is the Ringer's Dark. That's sieved down so it's nice and fine, and then obviously we've got the dead reds. They've just come straight out of the freezer, just pop them straight into some of the lake water, and they're all ready now, thawed out and ready for the hook. Ratio wise, like I say, it's trial and error, but for me, I do them in one single batch. That's what this tub here is for. So that's 1 handful of ground bait, we've got then 1 handful of pellets, and then 1 handful of the dead reds. And like I say, you can tailor make this to each individual session. So you might find if there are lots of small fish there, for example, then you might want to cut back on the dead reds and focus more on the pellet to try and be, pick out the better fish. But on some venues, small fish aren't a problem, so this sort of a ratio might be all right. Now I'm looking at that now to kick off. I think for this particular session, I don't really know how well it's going to fish, and as a general rule, the harder it fishes, the less of these two that you have actually in the mix itself. Alright, so you'd have more ground bait. So for this particular batch, I'm going to go with 2 handfuls of ground bait and just go with that ratio, and then see how it goes from there. Well, the rig itself is super simple. This is a free running setup that I've got, so it's allowed on it complies with most fishery rules. All it is a very simple open method feeder. You want to be as light as you possibly can get away with. A lot of the commercials that we fish now are very silty, and certainly silty in certain areas, so you want to keep this nice and small. The other thing is, because you're leaving the hook bait out, that's the key to the method. That obviously means that chances are you're going to be catching a lot of quick fish, because what happens is they hear the plop, they see the plop of the feeder go in, they hear it, obviously they come to it, and then your hook bait just falls behind the feeder like that. Because you're hooking fish quickly, you want a feeder that's going to empty quickly, as so that's when you're packing the bait in this feeder, make sure it's going to empty nice and quickly, because you want it to empty right where you've hooked the fish. And because you might, when the fish are there, you're going to be in and out quite frequently. So that's another reason why you need a small feeder as well, because you don't want to be piling too much bait in. This one's 15 grams, so that's I think that's possibly the lightest one you can get in this style. So it's 15 gram free running. All it is, the rig then goes to a quick change bead, which means I can change the hook length really easily. And then we've got the 4-inch hook length. These are the ready tied ones, the matrix ones that I use, to a size 16, which I think is perfect for when you're fishing maggot, either single maggot or double maggot. Size 16 carp rigger. So it's free running, simple as that. It's a really easy rig, and all what happens is you fill the feeder with the mix that you've already prepared, and the key is you leave the hook bait out, and that's that's going to give it an added visual attraction of when the feeder goes in. Obviously there are some freebies in there, some pellets in there, some ground bait. Don't pack that in too tight, otherwise it won't empty. If you're going to be hooking fish straight away, you want that to empty, or be able to empty straight away. And then obviously you've got your hook bait that will fall down through the water behind the feeder, and obviously the fish comes in to have a look what's there, and hopefully they're going to pick out the hook bait. They're the real weight boosters. Places like Barston, Larford, all these big commercials, you could really put a fantastic weight of these fish together. Well, because we're fishing for anything, you just need a really nice balanced setup. For me, this is the setup that I'm using today. Is what I love to use on places like Barston, Larford and commercials where you're doing this sort of fishing. It's just a 10'10", 3.3 metre rod. It's the XS Slim, this one, and I find that is coupled perfectly with a 3000 size reel. Any sort of rod that's this sort of length, a 3000 reel generally is absolutely spot on, because obviously you're not casting at range and the balance of it is really nice on this short rod. I've got this coupled with a 1 ounce tip, which is perfect for this sort of fishing, and like I say, when you're fishing at this sort of short range, you're always best using mono as opposed to braid. A lot of the bites, certainly when you're fishing with a method feeder, the fish that are basically hooked, they're already hooked, so a lot of the bites and a lot of the pulls can be quite violent, certainly when you start coming closer in as well. Today I'm only fishing, this is a narrower venue than some of the big commercials that I fish in big competitions, so I'm only underarming this to 12 metres today, because that's just the right line to fish, I think. And you know, when you're fishing at short range like that, a lot of the fish that they're basically hooked, you know, they're not bites, they're already hooked, they've hooked themselves because it's a self-hooking rig, so that is why I always go down the mono route. And obviously when you come closer in than that, like sometimes we are fishing closer in, you've got to be careful, you can lose your rod quite easily, and that's why I don't use braid. So I use 6 pound mono, this is Carp Master mono, and that's just perfect for fishing like this. I hope you've enjoyed this little insight. There are so many methods out there that, you know, a lot of people think there's one way of fishing them, and you know, there's so many different ways and spin-offs from certain methods, and this is certainly one of them. You know, we talk all the time about how some of the top lads always seem to manage to get an edge and always end up on top, even if there are only 2 or 3 fish in front, but it happens far too often for it to be more than just coincidence, and it's down to application, simple as that. So I hope you've enjoyed this insight into something that can really get you out of trouble sometimes. You know, it can be a get out of jail card on certain occasions, especially when it's fishing hard. So I hope you've enjoyed this insight. If you want to see more videos like this, there is one every Thursday, every week. Just hit subscribe down there, you won't miss a video. And if you want some more in-depth kind of videos, ones where I go more into depth about preparing for matches and a lot of the analysing a lot of the things that I do, then you might want to look at my other channel, which is just there, that's Patreon TV, the link is there for you. So thanks for watching, I really appreciate it, and please let me know if you've been out there and tried this. Comment below, let me know how you got on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week.